On my birthday, my sister's daughter threw her drink on me and said, "Now you look as cheap as you really are." My mom took her side. I just smiled. That night, I canceled my sister's credit card. But at 7:50 a.m., her daughter woke up to see her car missing. And then, there are moments in life that hit you like a punch to the gut, moments that shatter illusions you've clung to for decades. For me, that moment came on my 35th birthday, when my own niece, with a smirk I'll never forget, deliberately ruined my most prized possession and then, in front of everyone, told me I looked as cheap as I actually am. I remember standing frozen in that elegant restaurant, La Pavilion, as red wine bled through the delicate cream fabric of my Valentino dress. 6 months of careful savings gone. My sister Stephanie watched with that familiar, knowing smirk, while her daughter, Zoe, barely 16 and dripping with my parents' indulgence, held her now empty glass. The words, "Now you look as cheap as you actually are," echoed, loud enough for neighboring tables to turn. The restaurant fell silent, but inside me, a different sound roared, the sound of my tolerance for their cruelty finally dying. Growing up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, I learned early that hard work was my only path. My parents ran a moderately successful furniture store, providing a comfortable middle-class life, but nothing extravagant. My older sister, Stephanie, was born 4 years before me, and from my earliest memories, there was always something undeniably special about how my parents treated her. Stephanie has a natural talent. My mother would gush when my sister won the 4th grade spelling bee. 3 years later, when I won the same competition, the praise for me was a cool, "Ashley must have studied really hard." The pattern was established. Stephanie possessed innate brilliance. I merely compensated with effort. After high school, I worked 2 jobs to put myself through state college, earning a business degree with honors. Meanwhile, Stephanie attended an expensive private university, completely on our parents' dime, changing majors 3 times before finally settling on art history. When she struggled to find work afterward, my father connected her with his golf buddy, Daniel Thompson, who owned a luxury real estate firm. Within a year, Stephanie and Daniel were dating. Within 2, they were married. Their wedding was a $75,000 affair at the Grand Harbor Resort that my parents paid for by remortgaging their house. I still remember my mother's words when I expressed concern about their financial sacrifice. "When it's your turn, we'll figure something out." The implication, that my wedding would naturally be less significant, hung heavy in the air. Stephanie and Daniel built a 5-bedroom house in the most exclusive neighborhood in town. They drove matching luxury cars and took quarterly vacations to places I could only dream of seeing on Instagram. Their daughter, Zoe, was born when I was 25, and she immediately became the golden grandchild, showered with more privileges than seemed possible to bestow on one child. I stayed in Cedar Rapids, too, slowly climbing the corporate ladder at Midwest Financial Partners. I started in the call center and worked my way up to senior financial advisor through sheer determination. Last month, I finally received the promotion to regional manager I'd been pursuing for 2 years. It came with a substantial raise, and I decided to treat myself to something I'd never allowed before, a designer dress. The cream Valentino was classic elegance, simple lines, impeccable tailoring, and a $2,200 price tag that made me close the browser window 3 times before finally purchasing it. I justified it as an investment piece, something I could wear to client meetings and special occasions for years to come. "You spent how much on a dress?" Megan, my best friend since college, had asked over coffee last week. "That's not like you, Ash." I know, I admit it. But for once, I wanted something really special, something that would make me feel like I've arrived, Megan understood. She'd witnessed the pattern of my family dynamics for 15 years, seeing how Stephanie's snide remarks about my quaint apartment or sensible car had accumulated like tiny paper cuts. The truth is, I'm proud of what I've built. My downtown apartment might not be a mansion, but it's mine, paid for with my own money. My 5-year-old Honda runs perfectly well. I have a healthy retirement account, no debt besides my modest mortgage and the respect of my colleagues. But family patterns run deep. Every monthly dinner at my parents' house became an exercise in restraint. Stephanie would detail their latest luxury purchase or vacation. "We're thinking of getting a summer place on Lake Michigan," she mentioned casually last Christmas. "Zoe needs somewhere to unwind during school breaks." Zoe, at 16, had already developed her mother's talent for casual cruelty. When I gave her a carefully selected book for her birthday last year, a special edition of a young adult novel she'd mentioned wanting, she barely glanced at it before setting it aside. "Thanks, I guess." Mom already ordered me the complete set online, though. A particular childhood memory stands out clearly. I was 8, Stephanie 12, and we were at the community pool. I'd just learned to dive and was eager to show my parents. After several attempts, I executed a perfect straight entry into the water. Swimming to the edge where my family sat, I waited for acknowledgement. "Did you see that?" I asked, water dripping from my hair. My mother looked up distractedly from where she was applying sunscreen to Stephanie's shoulders. "Oh, that's nice, honey." Minutes later, Stephanie did a simple jump into the pool, and my parents erupted in applause. "Beautiful form, Steph," my father called out. The disparity wasn't lost on me, even then. Last night, I'd called Megan with growing anxiety about my birthday dinner. "I just have this feeling something's going to go wrong," I confessed. Stephanie was weirdly insistent that we go to La Pavilion rather than the steakhouse I suggested. That's because the steakhouse is your favorite, not hers, Megan pointed out. When has your birthday ever actually been about you? The question hung between us, uncomfortable but true. Just remember, Megan continued. You're celebrating a huge professional achievement, too. Don't let them diminish that. I won't, I promised, though we both knew how easily I folded under my family's pressure. And wear that knockout dress, she added. You deserve to feel amazing. I hung up feeling slightly more confident, choosing to believe that this birthday might be different. Maybe, just maybe, my family would finally see me, really see me, and the woman I'd become. La Pavilion sits in the renovated historic district of Cedar Rapids, all exposed brick and crystal chandeliers. It's the kind of place where entrees start at $40 and reservations must be made weeks in advance. As I pulled up to the valet stand in my Honda, I felt a momentary hesitation. The young attendant glanced at my car with barely concealed judgment before offering a practiced smile. I smoothed down my cream Valentino, drawing confidence from its perfect fit. The dress was simply cut but exquisite, with a subtle texture to the fabric that caught the light as I moved. For once, I felt like I truly belonged in a place like this. Happy birthday, darling. My mother greeted me with air kisses near my cheeks, careful not to smudge her lipstick. She wore a navy blue pantsuit that I recognized from department store sales. My father stood behind her, already looking impatient, though I'd arrived precisely on time. Thanks, Mom. Hi, Dad. I accepted his brief hug. Stephanie and her family are already seated, he informed me, as if I'd kept them waiting. I followed them to a round table in the center of the restaurant where Stephanie, Daniel, and Zoe were indeed waiting. My younger brother Kyle and his wife Jessica had yet to arrive. Finally, Stephanie said, checking her watch, though I was actually 5 minutes early. We were about to order without you. Sorry to inconvenience you on my birthday, I replied with a smile that I didn't feel. Stephanie narrowed her eyes slightly, but said nothing. Zoe barely looked up from her phone as I took my seat. At 16, my niece was already a carbon copy of her mother, perfectly highlighted blonde hair, expensive clothes, and an air of boredom with anything that didn't directly benefit her. That's an interesting dress choice, Stephanie commented, her tone making it clear that interesting wasn't a compliment. She herself wore a black Gucci dress with a distinctive red and green stripe at the waist, a detail she'd make sure everyone noticed before the evening ended. Thank you, I replied simply, refusing to diminish my purchase. Our server, a young woman named Amelia, arrived to take our drink orders. And we're celebrating a birthday tonight, she asked with genuine warmth. Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. Yes, our Ashley is 35 today. Wonderful. Happy birthday, Amelia said to me. First round of drinks will be my treat. How kind, Stephanie interjected. We'll need a bottle of the Chateau Margaux for the table. Daniel raised an eyebrow. That's a $400 bottle, dear. It's a celebration, Stephanie insisted with a wave of her hand. Zoe finally looked up from her phone. Can I have a virgin mojito? The kind with a special sugarcane stick. Of course, Amelia noted before turning to me. And for the birthday girl? Just sparkling water with lime for now. Thank you, I said, conscious of staying clear-headed. Stephanie smirked. Always the responsible one. Live a little, it's your birthday. I have an early meeting tomorrow, I explained, though I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Right, the new promotion, Stephanie said with exaggerated remembrance. Regional manager of what was it again? Insurance sales. Financial advising, I corrected. I oversee 26 advisors across 3 states now. How nice for you, Stephanie said dismissively. Daniel just closed on the Thompson Tower project. $18 million. She squeezed her husband's arm possessively. Daniel at least had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. It was a team effort. Kyle and Jessica arrived then, providing a welcome interruption. My younger brother had always been the family peacekeeper, maintaining relationships with everyone while somehow avoiding being drawn into the dynamics. Happy birthday, sis. Kyle enveloped me in a genuine hug. Jessica handed me a beautifully wrapped package. Open it now, she encouraged. Inside was a leather-bound planner with my initials embossed in gold. For the big shot regional manager to keep track of her empire, Jessica winked. It's perfect, I said, truly touched. Thank you both. We have your gift at home, my mother interjected. It's too big to bring to the restaurant. I nodded, knowing from experience it would be something practical rather than personal, likely kitchen appliances or bedding. Throughout the appetizer course, Zoe's behavior grew increasingly disruptive. She took selfies with Flash, loudly criticized the food, this bruschetta is nowhere near as good as what we had in Milan, and interrupted conversations to show Instagram posts to her mother. Zoe, maybe put the phone away while we eat, I suggested gently after she nearly knocked over a water glass while reaching across the table. Whatever, she muttered, but tucked the phone into her designer purse. She's just being a teenager, Stephanie defended immediately. The conversation turned to my parents' upcoming anniversary trip to Scottsdale. As they described their planned activities, I noticed how animated they became, a stark contrast to their polite interest in my career news. You should see the resort Daniel recommended, my mother gushed. The presidential suite has its own infinity pool. Sounds amazing, I replied, taking a sip of my water. You know, Stephanie chimed in. You could afford nice vacations too if you'd prioritize differently. That apartment downtown must eat up your salary. I felt my cheeks warm. I like my apartment, actually, and I travel when I want to. Weekend trips to Chicago don't really count as travel, Stephanie laughed, as if sharing a joke with the table. I glanced down at my cream dress, drawing strength from how special it made me feel, despite Stephanie's attempts to diminish me. The Valentino represented more than an expensive purchase. It symbolized recognizing my own worth after years of allowing my family to determine my value. When our entrees arrived, I realized we'd nearly reached the halfway point of the dinner without any major incidents. Perhaps, I thought optimistically, we would make it through the evening intact. Then my father raised his glass. To Ashley, he began, 35 years young, and finally finding her footing in the business world. Finally, as if my entire career until now had been a warm-up. I forced a smile and raised my water glass. And he continued, to Stephanie and Daniel, for their guidance and example of real success. My hand froze midair. From across the table, Kyle caught my eye with a sympathetic wince. And to Zoe, my father added, for her excellent grades this semester. A 3.4 GPA while maintaining all her extracurriculars is impressive. I'd graduated with a 4.0 while working 30 hours a week, but my accomplishments had never warranted a dinner toast. As the server brought out a birthday cake, chocolate with buttercream, Stephanie's favorite, not the lemon cake I preferred, I noticed Zoe's attention fixed on my dress for the first time that evening. Her expression shifted from boredom to something darker, more calculating. She leaned over to whisper something to Stephanie, who smirked and shrugged in response. The cake was placed before me, 35 candles flickering in the dim restaurant lighting. Make a wish, my mother prompted. I closed my eyes, wishing for the strength to finally stand up for myself, and blew out the candles in one breath. The table erupted and practiced. Applause just as Zoe reached for her virgin mojito. Time seemed to slow. Zoe's arm extended across the table. In one fluid motion that couldn't possibly have been accidental, her elbow knocked into her virgin mojito, sending the full glass tumbling directly toward me. I watched, paralyzed, as the green liquid arced through the air, mint leaves suspended like tiny islands, before splashing across the bodice of my cream Valentino. The cold shock of the liquid against my chest broke the spell. I gasped, pushing my chair back and standing as the mojito continued its destruction, gravity pulling the sticky mixture down the front of my dress in rivulets. Lime and sugar clung to the delicate fabric, immediately leaving visible stains on the pristine cream material. That's when Zoe delivered the blow that would change everything. Now you look as cheap as you actually are, she said, her 16-year-old voice carrying through the suddenly silent restaurant. Her expression wasn't one of embarrassment or regret, but of satisfied malice. Her lips curled into a smirk that mirrored her mother's. The table froze. Kyle's fork clattered against his plate. Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. My father blinked rapidly, looking between Zoe and me as if unsure what had just happened. My mother immediately reached for her napkin, dabbing uselessly at the air in my direction. Zoe. Daniel finally broke the silence, his tone more surprised than scolding. Stephanie's reaction was what cut deepest. Rather than reprimanding her daughter, she laughed, a short, amused sound, before composing her face into an unconvincing mask of concern. It was obviously an accident, Stephanie said, not bothering to get up. Ashley, you're making a scene. I stood motionless, mojito dripping onto my new shoes, acutely aware of neighboring diners, pretending not to stare. The calculated cruelty of the moment crystallized everything I'd experienced over decades, all the subtle put-downs, the dismissals, the systematic undermining packaged as family dynamics. That was completely intentional, Kyle said firmly, breaking his usual diplomatic stance. Zoe, apologize to your aunt. Now. Zoe rolled her eyes. Sorry your dress couldn't handle a little drink, she muttered, focusing on her phone again. That's not an apology, Jessica insisted. Girls will be girls, my mother interjected nervously. Ashley, go clean up in the bathroom. I'm sure it won't be noticeable when it dries. The dress was ruined. We all knew it. The $2,200 investment piece that had made me feel worthy for exactly 45 minutes was destroyed in a calculated act of cruelty. I need a minute, I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. I walked to the restroom with as much dignity as I could muster, feeling the stares of other diners following me. In the elegant bathroom of La Pavilion, I finally allowed myself to look in the mirror. The damage was catastrophic. The pale cream fabric was now stained with greenish-brown splotches, sugar crystals clinging throughout. Even in the most forgiving light, the dress was beyond saving. The tears came then, hot and furious. I gripped the marble countertop, watching my mascara create dark rivers down my cheeks to match the stains on my dress. The bathroom door opened behind me, and I quickly tried to compose myself. Oh, honey, a gentle voice said. It wasn't my mother or Jessica, but a restaurant employee named Lauren, according to her name tag. Let me help you. Lauren was perhaps 10 years younger than me, with kind eyes and efficient movements. Without judgment, she wet paper towels and began carefully blotting at my dress. I worked in costume design before restaurants, she explained. The sugar is the real problem here. It'll leave a mark even if we get the color out. It's ruined, isn't it? I asked, already knowing the answer. Lauren met my eyes in the mirror. Yes, she said honestly. I'm sorry. Was it Valentino? I just bought it. First designer piece I've ever owned. Understanding flickered across her face. And someone did this deliberately. When I nodded, her expression hardened. That's unforgivable. Something about her straightforward validation broke through my people-pleasing instincts. Yes, I agreed. It is. Lauren helped me clean up as best we could, even retrieving club soda from the bar. We managed to remove the worst of the visible staining, though the dress was clearly damaged beyond repair. Before I left the bathroom, she pressed her card into my hand. My cousin owns a dry cleaning service that specializes in designer pieces, she said. It won't be perfect, but they might be able to save it enough for resale. Text me if you want her contact. I thanked her, genuinely touched by the stranger's kindness when my own family had offered none. Returning to the table, I found dessert being served as if nothing had happened. Stephanie was regaling my parents with stories of Zoe's debate team achievements. Zoe herself was back on her phone, occasionally glancing up to smirk at my ruined outfit. Everything okay? Cal asked quietly as I took my seat. Not really, I replied honestly. We ordered you the chocolate mousse, my mother said brightly. Your favorite. It wasn't. I preferred creme brulee, as anyone who knew me would remember. The remainder of dinner passed in a blur. I picked at the wrong dessert, nodded at appropriate intervals, and felt a disconnection from my body that was almost peaceful. Something fundamental had shifted inside me. The dress might be ruined, but clarity had replaced confusion. When the check arrived, I declined my father's half-hearted offer to cover my portion. I've got it, I said, placing my credit card alongside his. This birthday dinner, at least, wouldn't be another item on the invisible ledger of what I owed my family. In the parking lot, Cal pulled me aside. I'm sorry about what happened in there, he said. That was way out of line. It was, I agreed, no longer minimizing to make others comfortable. Let us know if you need anything, Jessica added, squeezing my arm. I nodded, thanked them for coming, and walked to my Honda. The valet gave me a sympathetic look that I might have found humiliating earlier in the evening. Now, I simply thanked him and tipped generously. The drive home was strangely peaceful. Megan called as I pulled into my apartment complex. How is it? She asked. Zoe deliberately spilled her drink all over my new dress and told me I look as cheap as I actually am, I stated flatly. She what? Megan's outrage filled the car. What did Stephanie do? Laughed, then said I was making a scene. That's it, Megan declared. I've kept my mouth shut about your family for 15 years, but I'm done. They're toxic, Ash. All of them, except maybe Kyle. You deserve so much better. As I climbed the stairs to my apartment, still wearing the ruined Valentino, I realized Megan was right. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider a radical thought. What if I stopped trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it? Inside, I carefully removed the dress and hung it on my bathroom door. Tomorrow, I would assess whether Lauren's cousin could salvage anything. Tonight, I would allow myself to grieve, not just for the dress, but for the fantasy I'd maintained about my family ever truly seeing me. Morning light streamed through my bedroom windows, pulling me from fitful sleep. For a few blissful seconds, I existed in the liminal space between dreaming and consciousness before remembrance crashed over me. My birthday, the dress, Zoe's calculated cruelty, and Stephanie's enabling laughter. I padded to the bathroom where my Valentino hung like a crime scene exhibit. Daylight was unforgiving, revealing the full extent of the damage. The mojito had left a constellation of brownish-green stains across the bodice, with sticky residue crystallized throughout the fabric. I gently touched a discolored spot, remembering how special I'd felt when first trying it on in my bedroom, twirling like a teenager before the mirror. 6 months of careful budgeting, one splurge after a lifetime of sensible choices, ruined in seconds by deliberate malice. I thought back to purchasing the dress, how my finger had hovered over the complete purchase button, the little voice telling me I was being ridiculous, that someone like me didn't need designer clothes. I'd silenced that voice, believing I deserved something beautiful, something that made me feel extraordinary. It's an investment piece, I justified to myself. Classic design, excellent quality. Cost per wear over years will make it reasonable. My phone buzzed with a text from Kyle. Checking on you this morning. What happened last night was completely unacceptable. Jessica and I are here if you need to talk. His message was followed by another. And for what it's worth, you looked stunning in that dress. The simple validation brought fresh tears. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone, anyone, from my family to acknowledge what had happened. My phone remained conspicuously silent otherwise. No apology from Stephanie or Zoe. No check-in from my parents. Their silence spoke volumes about where I ranked in their priorities. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen island, opening my laptop almost mechanically. Instead of checking work emails as I'd intended, I found myself typing into the search bar, toxic family dynamics. The results were illuminating. Article after article described patterns I recognized intimately: scapegoating, golden child syndrome, enabling behaviors, emotional neglect disguised as tough love. One phrase particularly resonated: the family scapegoat often succeeds despite, not because of, their family environment. Yet their achievements are minimized while their shortcomings are magnified. I spent hours reading, moving from credible psychology websites to personal blogs of people who'd experienced similar family dynamics. Their stories mirrored mine with eerie precision. The scapegoat who worked twice as hard for half the recognition. The golden child whose behavior was excused regardless of its impact on others. The parents who reinforced the dynamic either actively or through passive acceptance. By noon, I felt both emotionally drained and strangely empowered. There was validation in naming what I'd experienced and realizing that the problem wasn't my perception, but the reality of how I'd been treated. I texted Lauren from the restaurant, thanking her again for her kindness and asking for her cousin's contact information. Then I called my therapist, Dr. Carter, who I'd been seeing sporadically for general anxiety. "I can fit you in tomorrow at 2 o'clock, her receptionist offered. Dr. Carter had a cancellation. I accepted gratefully, knowing I needed professional guidance to navigate what came next. That evening, I spread the ruined Valentino across my bed and took photographs from various angles, documenting the damage. I wasn't sure why, perhaps as evidence, perhaps as closure. Then I carefully packed it in a garment bag for my appointment with Lauren's cousin tomorrow. My phone rang just as I was making dinner. Kyle's name flashed on the screen. "Hey," I answered. "Hey sis," he said. "Just wanted to check in again. You okay?" "Not really," I admitted, "but I'm working through it." "Listen," Kyle's voice took on a determined edge I rarely heard from my peacekeeper brother. "What happened last night wasn't okay. It wasn't a prank or an accident. It was deliberate cruelty, and no one stood up for you the way they should have." His words unlocked something in me. "Thank you for acknowledging that." "I should have said more in the moment," he continued. "I've been thinking a lot about our family dynamic, and I think this has been happening for a long time, in different ways." "It has," I confirmed, relief flooding through me at having an ally in my family. I talked to Jessica about it, and she pointed out some patterns I hadn't noticed. How Mom and Dad minimize your accomplishments, but celebrate Stephanie's smallest efforts. How Zoe's behavior keeps getting worse because no one corrects her. We talked for nearly an hour, comparing observations and experiences. Kyle, being the youngest and the only boy, had experienced a different version of our family dynamic, but he recognized the fundamental imbalance. "What are you going to do?" he finally asked. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "But I can't keep pretending everything's normal. Something needs to change." "Whatever you decide, Jessica and I support you," he assured me. After we hung up, I felt stronger than I had in years. For the first time, I wasn't questioning my perception or minimizing my hurt to maintain family peace. The next day, Lauren's cousin examined my dress with professional detachment. "I can remove some of the staining," she explained. "But the sugar has already damaged the fabric structure. It will never look new again." I nodded, having expected this verdict. "Do what you can, please." My session with Dr. Carter that afternoon was revelatory. I described the birthday incident in detail, then expanded to the lifelong pattern of different treatment between Stephanie and me. "What you're describing sounds like a classic family dynamic where roles become fixed," Dr. Carter explained. "Once these patterns are established, they can be extraordinarily difficult to change because everyone, including you, is invested in maintaining the status quo, even when it's harmful." "Even me?" I questioned. "Yes," she said gently. "By continuing to accept this treatment, by minimizing your feelings and achievements to avoid rocking the boat, you've been an involuntary participant in the dynamic." The truth of her words stung. "So, what do I do?" "You set boundaries," she said simply. "You decide what treatment you're willing to accept going forward. Communicate those expectations clearly and be prepared to enforce consequences when boundaries are crossed." "They won't like it," I warned. "No," Dr. Carter agreed. "They won't. Change is threatening, especially to systems that have functioned a certain way for decades. But Ashley, the question isn't whether they'll like it. The question is, are you willing to continue sacrificing your well-being to maintain a harmful status quo?" Put that way, the answer was clear. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not." That evening, I called Kyle again. "I want to have a family meeting," I told him. "Not at a restaurant, not as part of another event. A specific conversation about what happened on my birthday and the larger patterns it represents." "Okay," he said without hesitation. "When and where?" "This weekend. Mom and Dad's house. I'd like you and Jessica there if you're willing." "We'll be there," he promised. "Have you talked to Mom and Dad yet?" "I'm calling them next," I said. Then Stephanie. My parents were surprised by my request, but agreed readily enough. "Is everything all right, dear?" my mother asked, concerned, finally making an appearance 2 days after the incident. "No," I answered truthfully, "but I hope it will be after we talk." Stephanie was predictably defensive. "A family meeting? Seriously, Ashley? Don't you think you're being a bit dramatic about a spilled drink?" "This isn't just about the drink," I said evenly. "And I'd like Zoe to be there too." "Absolutely not." Stephanie snapped. "I'm not subjecting my daughter to some kind of tribunal because you're overly sensitive." "This isn't a negotiation," I replied, surprising myself with my firmness. "Either both of you attend, or I'll be having a conversation with Mom and Dad about why you refused." There was a long pause before Stephanie grudgingly agreed. I spent the rest of the week preparing. I wrote down specific incidents that illustrated the pattern of favoritism and dismissal. I practiced what I wanted to say, anticipating deflections and minimizations. I consulted with Dr. Carter about productive approaches to such difficult conversations. By Saturday morning, I felt as prepared as possible for what would undoubtedly be an uncomfortable confrontation. As I dressed in a simple black sheath from my closet, no designer labels, no special significance, I caught my reflection and noticed something different. My posture was straighter, my expression more determined. For the first time in my adult life, I was prioritizing truth over harmony, authenticity over approval. The ruined Valentino hung in my closet, partially restored but forever changed. Much like me, I was no longer the person who would smile through humiliation to keep the peace. The dress had cost me $2,200, but the lesson it taught was proving invaluable. My parents' house looked exactly as it always had, a well-maintained colonial in a respectable neighborhood, with my mother's carefully tended flower beds framing the walkway. The familiarity was oddly jarring given how profoundly my perspective had shifted since my last visit. Kyle and Jessica's car was already parked in the driveway. I pulled up behind them, taking a moment to collect myself before heading inside. The folder on my passenger seat contained my notes, specific examples, talking points, the boundaries I intended to establish. I'd prepared like this was the most important business presentation of my career, because in many ways, it was. Inside, tension permeated the living room. My parents sat together on the sofa, expressions uneasy. Kyle and Jessica occupied the love seat, offering encouraging smiles as I entered. Stephanie stood by the fireplace rather than sitting, her posture defensive. Zoe slouched in an armchair, AirPods visible beneath her curtain of blonde hair, making it clear she considered this meeting beneath her. "Thank you all for coming," I began, taking the remaining armchair. My professional voice emerged naturally, calm and measured. "Can we make this quick?" Stephanie interrupted immediately. "Daniel has a client dinner tonight, and we need to get back." "I'll be as concise as possible," I replied, refusing to be rushed. I asked for this meeting because what happened at my birthday dinner was unacceptable. And it highlighted patterns that have gone unaddressed for too long. "If this is about Zoe's little accident," my mother began. "It wasn't an accident," I stated firmly. "Zoe deliberately poured her drink on my dress and then insulted me. But this isn't just about what happened Tuesday night. It's about a pattern of behavior that's been happening for decades." "Here we go," Stephanie sighed dramatically. "Ashley's playing victim again." "That response exemplifies exactly what I'm talking about," I said, maintaining my composure. "When I express hurt, I'm playing victim. When Stephanie expresses hurt, the entire family mobilizes to address it." My father shifted uncomfortably. "That's not fair, Ashley." "Let me share some examples," I continued, opening my folder. "When I was promoted to regional manager last month, a position I worked toward for years, Mom, you said, 'That's nice, dear.' When Stephanie sold her first house 3 weeks after getting her real estate license through Daniel's connections, you took the entire family out to celebrate. When I graduated with honors while working 30 hours a week," I continued, "Dad said I'd finally finished. When Stephanie completed her degree after switching majors 3 times, with full financial support from you both, you called her perseverant and dedicated. College was hard for me." Stephanie interjected. "Not everyone finds academics as easy as you do." "That's exactly my point," I said. "My achievements are attributed to things coming easily to me, despite the fact that I've worked incredibly hard. Stephanie's achievements, however modest, are celebrated as triumphs over adversity." "You've always been jealous of your sister," my father accused, his face reddening. "Even as a child, you competed for attention." "I wasn't competing for attention," I corrected. "I was trying to earn the same love and recognition that seemed to come automatically for Stephanie." "Oh, please." Stephanie scoffed. "You were always Mom and Dad's perfect daughter. Little Miss responsible. Little Miss self-sufficient. Do you have any idea what it's like living in your shadow?" Her statement was so divorced from reality that I actually laughed. "My shadow, Stephanie? You've had every advantage. Our parents remortgaged their house to pay for your wedding. They've subsidized your lifestyle for years. They babysit Zoe whenever you ask, even canceling plans with me to do so." "That's different," my mother protested weakly. "Stephanie needs more help because you never taught her to stand on her own," I pointed out. "And now Zoe is following the same pattern. She deliberately ruined something important to me, and instead of consequences, she received tacit approval." Throughout this exchange, Zoe had pretended to ignore us, but I noticed her AirPods weren't actually connected to her phone. She was listening intently while feigning disinterest. "Zoe, remove your earbuds," I said directly. "This concerns you too." "You can't tell me what to do," she muttered. "But remove them anyway." "You're right. I can't. But I can tell you how your actions affected me. You destroyed a dress that represented a significant achievement for me. And you did it purposefully with malice." "It was just a dress," Zoe shrugged, though her expression flickered with something that might have been discomfort. "It wasn't just a dress," I corrected. "It was a symbol of years of hard work. And your comment afterward made it clear that you understood exactly what you were doing." "Oh my God, are you still obsessing over a stupid drink spill?" Stephanie interjected. "It's not Zoe's fault you spent a ridiculous amount of money on a white dress. What did you expect?" "I expected basic respect," I replied evenly. Which brings me to my next point. Going forward, I will no longer participate in family gatherings where my achievements are minimized, my feelings dismissed, or where I'm subjected to deliberate cruelty. "So, you're giving us an ultimatum," my father demanded. "I'm establishing boundaries," I clarified. "I love this family, but I don't love how I've been treated, and I won't accept it anymore." "This is absurd," Stephanie declared. You're blowing everything out of proportion because you can't take a joke. It wasn't a joke. Kyle spoke up for the first time. It was mean-spirited and deliberate. And Ash is right. This has been going on for years. We've all noticed it, but no one says anything because it's easier to let Ashley absorb the negative treatment than to confront the real issues in this family. The room fell silent at my brother's intervention. My father looked genuinely shocked, while my mother's eyes filled with tears. Kyle, you don't understand, Stephanie began. I understand perfectly, he interrupted. I've watched how differently you two have been treated our entire lives. I've seen how Ashley minimizes her accomplishments to avoid making waves while you highlight your smallest efforts, expecting lavish praise. That's not true. Stephanie's voice rose. You're just taking her side because your precious Jessica loves Ashley more than me. This isn't about sides, Jessica said calmly. This is about recognizing harmful patterns and changing them. So now I'm harmful? Stephanie threw up her hands. Perfect. Ashley has been feeding you lies about me and you're all buying it. Unbelievable. No one's calling you harmful, I clarified. I'm pointing out patterns of behavior that have been harmful to me. You want to talk about harmful? Stephanie's voice took on a dangerous edge. How about how you've always flaunted your precious independence? How you make a big show of paying your own way, making the rest of us look bad? How you judge my choices because they're different from yours? I've never judged your choices, I said, genuinely surprised. I've only asked for equal treatment. Equal treatment. Stephanie laughed bitterly. You've never needed anything from anyone. Do you know how intimidating that is? How it feels to be compared to someone who does everything right, who never needs help, who succeeds at everything she touches. Her outburst revealed something I hadn't considered, that Stephanie might actually be insecure about my independence rather than dismissive of it. The realization was momentarily disorienting. I haven't succeeded at everything, I said more gently. And I have needed help. I've just stopped asking for it because it rarely comes from this family. Girls, please, my mother intervened tearfully. We love you both equally. We've always tried our best. I know you have, I acknowledged. But the impact of your actions hasn't aligned with that intention. And at some point, impact matters more than intent. So, what exactly do you want from us? My father asked, his anger seemingly deflated. I want acknowledgement that these patterns exist. I want genuine effort to change them. And I want a sincere apology from Zoe for what happened at my birthday dinner. That's it? Stephanie asked sarcastically. Just total capitulation to your version of reality? This isn't about winning or losing, I explained. It's about creating healthier relationships moving forward. Stephanie grabbed her purse. I'm not going to sit here and be lectured about healthy relationships by someone who's never even had a serious boyfriend. Come on, Zoe. We're leaving. Stephanie, my mother pleaded. Please stay. We need to work this out. There's nothing to work out, Stephanie declared. Ashley is being dramatic and manipulative, turning you all against me with her twisted perception. When she's ready to act like an adult, maybe we can talk. She stormed toward the door, Zoe trailing behind her. As they reached the entryway, Zoe hesitated and turned back. For a brief moment, something like uncertainty crossed her face. But when Stephanie called sharply, Zoe, now, she hurried after her mother without a word. The front door slammed, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Well, my father finally said, I hope you're satisfied. I'm not, I admitted. I didn't want this to end in more division, but I'm also not surprised by Stephanie's reaction. You were pretty harsh, my mother suggested gently. I was honest, I corrected. There is a difference. Kyle and Jessica exchanged glances. Ash was completely reasonable, Kyle asserted. And everything she said was accurate. My father ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking older. Maybe there's some truth to what you're saying, he conceded reluctantly. But families are complicated, Ashley. No parent gets everything right. I'm not expecting perfection, I assured him. Just awareness and effort to change. And what if Stephanie refuses to participate? My mother asked anxiously. We can't just exclude her from the family. I'm not asking you to choose between us, I clarified. I'm asking you to hold both of us to the same standards, to celebrate my achievements with the same enthusiasm you show for hers, to take my feelings as seriously as you take hers. My parents exchanged looks, communicating silently, in the way long-married couples often do. Finally, my mother nodded slowly. We can try to be more balanced, she offered. I hadn't realized how our actions were coming across. It wasn't a full acknowledgement, but it was a start. As Kyle and Jessica prepared to leave, promising to call me later, I found myself alone with my parents for the first time in years. I do love you, my mother said, reaching for my hand. Both of you equally. I believe that you believe that, I replied gently. But love should be evident in actions, not just intentions. As I drove home, emotions churned within me. Grief for the validation I'd never received, pride in finally speaking my truth, uncertainty about what came next. The confrontation hadn't gone exactly as planned, but it had accomplished something essential. I'd finally stopped participating in my own diminishment. The family landscape had shifted, and though the path forward wasn't entirely clear, I knew I wouldn't be walking it as the same person who had entered that birthday dinner in a cream Valentino dress, hoping desperately for recognition that should have been freely given all along. The week following the confrontation passed in a strange limbo. Stephanie maintained radio silence, which wasn't surprising. What I hadn't expected was the steady stream of text messages from my mother, awkward but well-intentioned attempts to connect. Saw a commercial for that financial software you mentioned last month. Looked impressive. Your father and I were talking about how you helped us with our retirement planning. So grateful for your expertise. Found a photo of you winning the regional debate championship in high school. You were always so articulate. These belated acknowledgments were both touching and painful. Evidence that my parents had absorbed at least some of what I'd said, but also reminders of how long these affirmations had been withheld. Wednesday evening, my phone rang with my parents' number. My mother's voice sounded tentative when I answered. We're having dinner on Sunday, she said. Your father's grilling steaks. We'd love for you to join us. I hesitated. Will Stephanie be there? We invited her, my mother admitted. She hasn't responded yet. The old Ashley would have immediately agreed, eager to smooth over family tensions. The new Ashley took a breath and considered what she actually wanted. I think I'll skip this one, I said carefully. It's a bit soon for a family gathering. I need some space. My mother's disappointment was palpable. I understand, she said, though her tone suggested otherwise. Maybe next time. Maybe, I agreed, neither committing nor refusing. After we hung up, I felt a curious lightness. I'd prioritized my own emotional needs without anger or apology. A small victory, but significant. The following day, Kyle called to check in. Mom told me you're not coming Sunday, he said. Good for you. You're still going? I asked. Yeah, but with clear boundaries. Jessica and I talked about it, and we think it's important to maintain the relationship while reinforcing the changes we want to see. That makes sense, I acknowledged. It's just different for me. There's more history to navigate. No question, Kyle agreed. By the way, Stephanie called me yesterday. My stomach tightened. And she wanted me to talk some sense into you, he said with audible air quotes. I told her the only sense that needed talking was on her end. She hung up on me. I laughed despite myself. Sorry to put you in the middle. You didn't, Kyle assured me. I put myself there by choice. This has been a long time coming. That Saturday, Megan insisted on taking me shopping. You need a new statement piece, she declared, something that's just for you, not for impressing family or colleagues. We spent hours at the mall, eventually finding a royal blue dress at Nordstrom. It wasn't Valentino. The $320 price tag was much more reasonable, but the color was stunning and the fit impeccable. This is totally you, Megan said as I twirled before the fitting room mirror. Confident, vibrant, not trying to blend into anyone's background. I bought it without hesitation, along with matching shoes. The purchase didn't carry the same weight as the Valentino. I wasn't trying to prove anything to myself or others, which somehow made it more satisfying. That evening, I received an unexpected text from an unknown number. It's Zoe. Can we talk? Surprised and suspicious, I replied cautiously, how did you get my number? Grandma. Don't tell Mom I texted you. I considered ignoring the message, protecting myself from further manipulation, but curiosity won out. What do you want to talk about? The three dots appeared and disappeared several times before her response came through. I'm sorry about your dress. For real this time. The apology seemed sincere, but I'd been fooled before. Thank you for saying that. May I ask what prompted this? Another long pause. I heard what you said about patterns, about how I'm following Mom's pattern. I don't want to be like that. A small ember of hope glowed within me. That's very self-aware, Zoe. Mom's been really angry since your meeting thing. Keeps saying everyone's against her. Dad tried to talk to her about it, and they had a huge fight. I felt a pang of sadness for my niece, caught in the crossfire. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. It's not your responsibility to manage your mom's feelings. I know, she replied. That's what my counselor says, too. The mention of a counselor surprised me. You're seeing a counselor? School counselor. Mom doesn't know. I've been going since last semester. Another text quickly followed. I have to go. Mom's coming. Don't tell her we talked. Okay. I won't, I promised. Take care of yourself, Zoe. This unexpected exchange shifted something in my perception. Zoe wasn't just Stephanie's mini-me. She was her own person, potentially breaking free from unhealthy patterns. It reminded me that change was possible, even in entrenched family dynamics. At work, my confidence grew as I settled into my new role as regional manager. During a presentation to the executive team, I spoke with an authority I hadn't fully embraced before, my ideas receiving thoughtful consideration rather than the dismissal I'd unconsciously expected. Excellent analysis, Ashley, the CEO commented afterward. Your recommendation on the Henderson account was particularly insightful. I accepted the praise without deflection or qualification, another small but meaningful shift. My weekly session with Dr. Carter focused on establishing healthy boundaries in all relationships, not just family ones. What I'm hearing, she observed, is that the confrontation with your family, while difficult, has empowered you to advocate for yourself in other areas of your life. It has, I agreed. It's like once I stopped accepting one form of diminishment, I became less willing to accept any form. That's a profound realization, Dr. Carter nodded. Many people find that setting boundaries in one significant relationship creates a positive ripple effect. She helped me process my mixed feelings about Zoe's text, the ongoing silence from Stephanie, and my parents' awkward attempts at change. Authentic family transformation happens slowly, she reminded me. Patterns established over decades don't dissolve overnight. The question is whether you're seeing genuine effort versus performative adjustments. I considered this carefully. With my parents, I think there's genuine effort, even if it's clumsy. With Stephanie, I'm not seeing any effort at all. Then calibrate your expectations and engagement accordingly, Dr. Carter advised. Invest energy where there's potential for a healthy return. The following weekend, I decided to host a small dinner party at my apartment, a birthday do-over of sorts. I invited Kyle and Jessica, Megan and her husband, and 2 colleagues I'd grown closer to recently. I wore my new blue dress, prepared my favorite foods, and decorated with fresh flowers. As I arranged cheese and crackers on a serving board, I realized I wasn't thinking about what my family would think of my apartment, my food choices, or my outfit. I was simply looking forward to an evening with people who valued me as I was. The doorbell rang at 6:30. Kyle and Jessica arrived first, bearing wine and a small gift box. From both of us, Jessica said as I unwrapped a delicate silver bracelet with a small diamond charm. It's beautiful, I said, genuinely touched. Read the engraving, Kyle encouraged. On the inside of the band, tiny letters. Spelled out, your light, your terms. We're really proud of you, sis, Kyle said, hugging me tightly. The evening flowed with easy conversation and genuine laughter. No undertones of competition, no subtle put-downs, no walking on eggshells, just connection and enjoyment. As we finished dessert, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Opening it revealed my parents standing awkwardly in the hallway, my mother clutching a gift bag. We're not interrupting, are we? My father asked, his usual confidence noticeably absent. We should have called first, my mother added quickly. We can come back another time. I have friends over for dinner, I explained. You're welcome to join us for coffee if you'd like. They exchanged uncertain glances before my mother nodded. We'd like that, if you're sure we're not imposing. I introduced them to everyone, noticing how they made real effort to engage with my friends, asking questions about their lives and work. When my mother mentioned my recent promotion, there was genuine pride in her voice, subtle but unmistakable. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, my parents lingered. My mother handed me the gift bag. We wanted to give you this, she said. A proper birthday present. Inside was a leather portfolio embossed with my initials and the logo of my company. It's for your new position, my father explained. We thought it might be useful for client meetings. Thank you, I said, appreciating the thoughtfulness of a gift that acknowledged my professional identity. It's perfect. After my parents left, Kyle helped me load the dishwasher. Did you invite them? He asked curiously. No, I admitted. They just showed up. Bold move, he commented. But they were really trying tonight. They were, I agreed, feeling cautiously optimistic. As I placed the last wine glass in the dishwasher, my phone chimed with a text. It was from Zoe. Grandma said your party was nice. Maybe sometime I could come see your apartment. I smiled at this small olive branch. I'd like that, I replied. Let me know when you're free. Closing up my apartment after everyone had gone, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at me stood straighter, her expression more peaceful than it had been in years. The blue dress complemented her confidence perfectly. It struck me that I was finally becoming the person I'd always been beneath the family dynamics that had constrained me, not because I'd achieved some external marker of success, but because I'd learned to value myself independent of others' validation. The ruined Valentino still hung in my closet, now professionally cleaned, but forever marked by what had happened. I decided to keep it as a reminder, not of Zoe's cruelty or Stephanie's enabling, but of the moment I'd finally said enough. 1 month after the confrontation, I had coffee with my mother alone. She brought photo albums I'd never seen before, full of my childhood achievements that had apparently been documented, but never celebrated. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said hesitantly, about what you said about patterns. I didn't see it then, but looking back through these photos. She paused, visibly emotional. You were an extraordinary child, Ashley. I don't know why we didn't. She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. The acknowledgement, however belated, was healing in its own way. What about Stephanie? I asked gently. Have you talked with her about any of this? My mother sighed. We're trying. She's resistant, but Daniel has been surprisingly supportive of making changes. He said Zoe's behavior that night shocked him too. It wasn't a fairy tale resolution, but it was progress. Real change, I was learning, rarely arrived in dramatic moments of transformation. It came in small shifts, in tentative texts from a niece, in belated recognition from parents, in the growing ability to stand in one's truth without anger or apology. The Valentino dress had cost me $2,200. The price of self-respect, it turned out, was both higher and more worthwhile than I could have imagined. My apartment had never looked better. Soft string lights twinkled along the balcony railing, visible through the sliding glass doors. Fresh flowers, peonies, and hydrangeas brightened every surface. The dining table was set with my best dishes, nothing fancy, but arranged with care. Spotify played a carefully curated playlist of upbeat jazz standards. This do-over birthday celebration felt significant. Not just a party, but a declaration. I was reclaiming what had been tainted, transforming an experience of humiliation into one of empowerment. Megan arrived first, characteristically early. Look at you, she exclaimed, taking in my royal blue dress. This is the real Ashley Williams, CEO energy in full effect. I laughed. Let me make it to regional manager for a full quarter before you start promoting me. Kyle and Jessica arrived next, followed by my work friends, Claire and Marcus. We were halfway through appetizers when another knock came at the door. Opening it revealed my parents standing awkwardly in the hallway. My mother held a bakery box. "We know we weren't invited," my father said quickly. "But your mother insisted we at least drop off a proper birthday cake. Lemon with buttercream. Your favorite, not Stephanie's." The acknowledgement of this small but significant detail, that they knew which flavor I actually preferred, touched me unexpectedly. "Would you like to come in?" I offered. "We've just started eating." Relief washed over my mother's face. "Only if you're sure we're not intruding." "You're not," I assured them, meaning it. They integrated into the gathering with surprising ease, my father engaging Marcus in a conversation about local sports teams while my mother helped distribute the appetizers she hadn't been asked to bring, but had anyway. Just as we were preparing to serve dinner, a final knock came. When I opened the door, Zoe stood alone in the hallway, clutching a small gift bag and looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Hi," she said awkwardly. "Grandma texted that they were here and I was at Maddie's house down the street, so..." She trailed off, clearly unsure of her welcome. Gone was the entitled teen who had deliberately ruined my dress. This Zoe seemed younger somehow, more vulnerable. "I'm glad you came," I said, genuinely meaning it. "Come in." A flash of surprise crossed her face, followed by cautious relief. She entered, her usual confident stride replaced by hesitant steps. My mother embraced her with obvious delight, but also whispered something in her ear that made Zoe nod solemnly. I suspected it was a reminder about behavior expectations. As we settled around the table, I noticed Zoe had positioned herself directly across from me. Throughout dinner, she remained unusually quiet, observing the easy banter between my friends with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. When the meal concluded, Zoe approached me as I cleared plates. "Can I talk to you?" she asked softly. "Privately?" I nodded, leading her to my small home office off the main living area. Once the door closed behind us, she thrust the gift bag toward me. "I made this for you," she said, eyes fixed on the carpet. "In art class." Inside was a handcrafted leather journal, the cover embossed with intricate designs clearly created with significant effort and skill. "Zoe, this is beautiful," I said, genuinely impressed. "Thank you." "There's a note," she mumbled, still not meeting my eyes. I found the folded paper tucked inside the front cover. In surprisingly neat handwriting, Zoe had written, *Ashley, I'm sorry for ruining your dress and saying what I said. It was mean, and I knew it would hurt you. That's why I did it. Mom always talks about how you think you're better than us because you did everything yourself. I guess I wanted to take you down a notch. But after hearing what you said at Grandma's house, I've been thinking a lot. I don't want to be the kind of person who hurts people to make myself feel better. My counselor says that's a pattern I can break if I try. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, or maybe ever, but I wanted you to know I'm really trying to be different. Zoe **. I looked up from the note to find my niece watching me anxiously, biting her lower lip in a gesture that reminded me powerfully of Stephanie at that age, before life's disappointments had hardened her. "This means a lot to me," I said carefully. "Thank you for your honesty." "My counselor said I should tell you why I did it," Zoe explained, words tumbling out. "It wasn't really about you. Mom's been really tough on me lately. Nothing I do is good enough. My grades, my friends, my clothes. She criticizes everything. When she saw your dress at the restaurant, she whispered that you were trying too hard to look rich. She said it was pathetic." The revelation wasn't particularly surprising, but it still stung. "So, you decided to put me in my place?" Zoe nodded miserably. "I thought it would make Mom happy, and it did for like 5 minutes. Then in the car, she and Dad had this huge fight about it. He said she encouraged me to be cruel, and she said he was taking your side like everyone always does." I absorbed this information, recognizing the familiar family pattern extending to the next generation. That must have been difficult to witness. "They fight a lot now," Zoe admitted, "about money, about me, about you. Dad says Mom resents you because you're independent and she isn't." The insight was surprisingly perceptive, especially coming from a teenager. "That might be part of it," I acknowledged. "Family dynamics are complicated." "Yeah, no kidding." Zoe's typical teenage sarcasm briefly resurfaced before she caught herself. "Anyway, I just wanted you to know I'm sorry, for real this time." "I appreciate that," I said. "And Zoe, the fact that you're recognizing these patterns now, at your age, is really impressive. It took me much longer." A small smile tugged at her lips. "Does that mean you forgive me?" "I'm working on it," I answered honestly. "Trust takes time to rebuild. But this is a really good start." When we rejoined the party, the atmosphere had shifted subtly. My parents watched our reemergence with cautious optimism. Zoe integrated herself into a conversation with Jessica about photography, showing a politeness I'd rarely witnessed from her. As the evening progressed, I found myself seated beside my mother on the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below. "This is a lovely apartment," she commented. "I don't think I've ever told you that." "Thank you," I said. "I've been happy here." She hesitated, then added, "Your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking since our discussion. We found a family therapist. We've had 2 sessions so far." This surprised me. My parents had always dismissed therapy as something for people who can't handle their own problems. "That's a big step," I acknowledged. "It was your father's idea, actually," she revealed. "He said he didn't want to lose you the way we're losing Stephanie." "You're losing Stephanie?" I asked, confused. My mother sighed heavily. "She refuses to acknowledge any problems or attend therapy with us. Daniel has been trying to convince her, but she's resistant. He called your father last week, quite concerned about her drinking. The revelation was concerning, but not entirely surprising. Stephanie had always used various means to avoid facing uncomfortable truths. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. I hope she finds her way through this. The therapist says we enabled many of her behaviors over the years, my mother continued. And that we sometimes used you as a counterbalance to her volatility. The responsible one who didn't need attention because you handled everything yourself. The acknowledgement, however belated, filled a space inside me that had ached for recognition. That sounds about right. We didn't see it then, she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. But we're trying to see it now to do better. Inside, laughter erupted as Kyle apparently shared an embarrassing story. Judging by Zoe's mortified expression and everyone else's amusement, it struck me that these people I cared about enjoying each other's company in my home was what I'd always wanted from family gatherings. Connection without competition, joy without judgment. As the evening wound down, guests began to depart. My parents hugged me with newfound awareness, neither too tight nor too distant. Zoe lingered until last, helping stack dessert plates with unexpected consideration. Maybe sometime we could get coffee or something, she suggested hesitantly. I could show you my art portfolio if you want. I'd like that, I said, genuinely meaning it. After everyone had gone, I stood in my quiet apartment, absorbing what had transpired. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Stephanie's absence was a reminder that some wounds wouldn't heal quickly or easily, if at all, but something fundamental had shifted, both within me and within my family system. 1 month later, the changes continued to unfold in unexpected ways. My parents began including me in decisions they would previously have consulted only Stephanie about. My father called for advice regarding their retirement investments, actually implementing my suggestions rather than nodding politely before doing whatever Stephanie's husband recommended. My relationship with Zoe developed cautiously but steadily. Our coffee meeting extended to 3 hours as she shared her artwork and ambitions to study graphic design, dreams her mother apparently dismissed as impractical. I found myself becoming a mentor of sorts, carefully avoiding undermining Stephanie's parental authority while still offering Zoe the support she clearly craved. Stephanie herself remained distant, though I'd received a terse text after my birthday do-over. Glad Mom and Dad had fun at your party. Not exactly an olive branch, but not outright hostility either. According to Kyle, who maintained relationships with everyone, Stephanie and Daniel were in couples counseling. The incident with my dress had apparently been a tipping point for Daniel, who'd grown increasingly concerned about the behaviors he'd been enabling in both his wife and daughter. At work, my confidence continued to flourish. I secured 2 major clients who specifically requested me as their advisor, having heard about my approach from colleagues. In my quarterly review, my supervisor mentioned potential for advancement to the executive level within 2 years, a trajectory I'd never allowed myself to imagine before. Dr. Carter and I scaled back our sessions to bi-weekly, focusing less on crisis management and more on long-term personal growth. You've done remarkable work, she observed during one session. Not just in setting boundaries with your family, but in recognizing your inherent worth independent of external validation. It still feels fragile sometimes, I admitted. Like I could slip back into old patterns if I'm not vigilant. That's normal, she assured me. New neural pathways take time to solidify, but you've established a foundation of self-respect that's increasingly stable. The ruined Valentino still hung in my closet, now professionally cleaned, but permanently altered by what had happened. I'd considered donating it, but ultimately decided to keep it, not as a reminder of hurt, but as a milestone marking when I'd finally valued myself enough to speak my truth. The blue dress I'd worn to my do-over celebration hung beside it, less expensive, but in many ways more valuable, representing not what I thought I should be, but who I actually was. On a Sunday afternoon, I met Megan for our weekly coffee date. You seem different, she observed, more settled somehow. I considered this. I think I finally stopped waiting for my family to see me clearly and started seeing myself clearly instead. That's profound, she said, raising her mug in a mock toast. To self-recognition. To self-recognition, I echoed, clinking my cup against hers. Later that evening, scrolling through photos from my do-over celebration, I paused on one that captured a moment I hadn't fully appreciated at the time. Zoe showing my mother something on her phone, both of them laughing. Kyle and Jessica engaged in animated conversation with my colleagues, my father refilling everyone's water glasses without being asked, and me in the center in my blue dress, not trying to manage anyone's experience or emotions, simply present in my own joy. The journey from that humiliating birthday dinner to this moment of genuine peace hadn't been linear or perfect. There had been setbacks, difficult conversations, old patterns reasserting themselves, moments of doubt. But the trajectory was unmistakable. I had stopped accepting treatment that diminished me, and in doing so, had created space for authentic connection with those capable of offering it. The Valentino dress had cost me $2,200. The price of self-respect had been higher, courage, confrontation, temporary estrangement, but its value was immeasurable. I had learned that true worth couldn't be purchased or bestowed. It could only be claimed, nurtured, and honored from within. And that realization was the most valuable gift I could have given myself at 35. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who didn't treat you with respect? Thank you for watching. Take care. Good luck.